So a couple of things about the Unreal Engine and the way it relates to your actual file structure on your computer, Mac or Windows, the same way. Just take the Word Explorer and replace it with Finder. Is that everything in the content browser is indeed a file that's on your hard drive as well. So if I right-click on this new map right here, or if I open it, apparently. Okay, right-click and I say, show me this in Explorer. It actually takes me to that asset, which is called a UMap. Everything else is called a UAsset. Maps are called UMaps. And this content folder all these folders are the same as these folders right here. So these things can be zipped up and stuff, and they moved around. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't really move things around because there's so many file associations. Like a mesh needs a material, which needs a texture. So don't really play around with this folder structure unless you just want to zip something up and send it to me. Okay, so when we have this folder structure, we've already seen that there's some other things, like for those of you who have experienced the wonderful repetitive crash syndrome, those crash logs are in your saved folder, and those are like every time it crashes, it makes a new time and date stamp for a new one, and you have these logs, and I'll ask you to send me these logs, and they're just, it's better than reading Tale of Two Cities. It's better than Harry Potter. It's just, some stuff, but usually if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it might give you some information about why it might have crashed. Right? I don't think I crashed. I think I just shut down my computer, so it was fine. But it'll say, you touched on this asset and it's too small in scale, crash. And so I need to import it at a larger scale because it's the polygons are too dense or something like that. So there could be some sort of way of debugging using this. And what this log is actually a spit out of what is on this in developer tools, our output log. This is like our console, right? So I already see that I have red means error. That means not good. Yellow means warning. Warning doesn't matter. Only if it gets in the way. But an error probably needs to be fixed. Right? It might get in the way of stuff. And for me, it's looking for my iOS developer account, and that's fine because I'm not doing an iOS thing right now. I might be later on, but not now. So here's this output log. We'll get into that in just a second. So oftentimes, I'll ask you to just send me what you have in your project. Don't send me the saved or intermediate. In fact, sometimes when you're having repetitive crashes, I'll just ask you to delete those and restart your project, and it will generate those folders again. So they're unneeded. When I get into showing version control and syncing to the cloud, we don't sync those two folders. Content imports. Content obviously is the most essential. It is the project. And then the imports is for you. It depends on whether you want to sync it or not, but I don't need that folder if you're sending me your project unless I need to see a specific asset. So if I say send me your project, click on the U project file and the content, zip that up and give it to me. That's all I need. And that's the smallest file there is. Config is basically these little these text files that save all these settings of what map should I load first, what are my render settings. It's all these everything inside of the preferences. When I click on something, that's recording it to this config file in this folder. Even when you move around your windows inside of the Unreal, it saves your layout by default. So if you delete your config files, it'll just reset your layout so that it's the standard default. So that's what the config files do. Not essential. It's depending on how you work with your team, whether or not you want to sync it. And then oftentimes if your project might get super big, you might have imported a 50 gigabyte asset pack or something like that. Then what I might ask you to do is create a blank project, and then just take your map and migrate your map over that you need me to debug, or just your assets you want, and then create a blank project. I call those carrier pigeons, and that way you're just sending me just the essential files, but it's within the folder structure of Unreal, so it opens up, it has a project file, and it all works. Okay, and just so that we're 100% clear on what the project file is, that's just a text file that says what engine you're opening up in and what plugins to include. So if I just open up here, it says that it's in 4.20. And that I'm using Houdini plugin and I'm using Apex Destruction. And that's pretty much it. Like I can generate these, I can copy paste these from other files, so it's not really that big of a deal. If I want to open this up as 4.21, I literally can just edit it like that and save it, and then it'll open up at 420, and that's so you can upgrade. And you can also right-click on this uProject file on both Mac and Windows, and you can say Switch Engine Version, and it'll let you just choose from a pull down of different engines. Right? You can't downgrade, but you can always upgrade. Right? Upgrade might cause some problems with some blueprints as they adapt them, but if you downgrade, all your levels will be deleted, which is why, again, we're staying one engine version behind. So if you are ready to like, if your project's done and you have no errors and you actually want to like play it and send it to people, instead of sending a project file so they have to download an entire engine, what you can do is actually make an executable. And the executable, the few things you have to do, like 3 things you have to do, are go to your project settings. At the very first one, the project description, it says Start in VR, tick that. Otherwise, it'll just come to a screen. So just say Start in VR, and the executable will automatically be rendered stereoscopically. And then you need to tell it the default map. This is the default map that opens up when I open up my editor, so that you can save you guys time. I know a lot of people were opening up and just doing the untitled map. If you say open up to my map, therefore when you open the project, that map open first, and then game default map, which is the next one, is what will be the map that it actually starts at when I make an executable. And then the one last thing to do is just go to File. If you're on a Mac, you can build for a Mac. If you're on Windows, you can build for Windows. And then gather all your friends around you so that you look so they're watching your screen, and then you can look super cool. You choose a location you want to build to, maybe your desktop or something. I might make a folder called Builds. Go in there. And then, like, gather your friends, and they can like look at this, and like they think you're like hacking the mainframe. You're like, oh yeah. And again, you can see in real time, like if it's going to error out, because you'll see like, oh no, we can't find this texture file. Like, oh, crash. And like, oh, I saw what was erroring out, and I can read this. Anyway, so this will build an executable, which is by far the most performative. It will run the fastest because it's not rendering out the UI of the engine, and it's also the smallest file you can send people. And this is like what you would put up in the Oculus store or the Steam store for other people to download, or just put it on your website so they can see your work. Cool? The only other thing I want to talk about real quick is optimization. And this is something that came up with, Sam was talking to me yesterday on the general channel about instructable mesh not working correctly. And it was a model that we downloaded from the free 3D models. And it was just too many polygons for it to do a destruction on. It was like 50,000. So what I was able to do was, let's just grab it real quick. It was the free 3D models, and it was a peach, which you will see very soon. And my package failed. And that's because I'm having all these errors. That's fine. I just need to say don't look at iOS. All right, so it was an OBJ, and it's free. We downloaded a peach. Looked great. It was a small file, but it was 50,000 polygons, which was too much. So we found out. So there we go. Oops. No, I'm just opening up Shia LaBeouf for some reason. That was for the video demo, which we didn't do. You have teaser, waiting for you when you come back from spring break. So if I take this peach and I import it, static meshes. Here we go. We grab it from my downloads. Sure, both. It's fine. That's all fine, just as a regular mesh. So there's a thing that Unreal has. There's a service that Unreal has paired with. It's actually owned by Microsoft now. It's called Simplygon, and it's a level of detail generator. It's basically an intelligent way of optimizing meshes. and it used to be a standalone platform, but as I said, Microsoft has purchased it. But it's won like Academy Awards for its technology. It's like really great at optimizing things, which you'll see. Yes, yes to all. All right, so I have this peach, and if we look up at the top right, it's a great peach. It's the best peach. And I don't know if you see right here, but it says it's like, yeah, 40,000 triangles, which was too much for us to do destruction for. Really simple, real quick. Right here, level of details. You can do a thing called level of detail where the closer you get to something, it switches it out with something of higher resolution automatically based off of meters to camera. And we're not using that right now. We're just going to make it optimized always. And so our level of detail 0, the default, is to go over to reduction settings, and then what percentage do you want to be of its current state? Like I want it to be like 1% of its current state, and see how that looks. I'm going to go into wireframe mode, see how dense that is. We definitely don't need that much resolution for something that's essentially a sphere. But let's say I go to 5%, and I say apply. You see it's a much more manageable mesh. It's only 2,000 polygons now, and if we look at it, regular, you can't tell the difference really. Right? So that's built in. That's SimplyGone's reduction engine, and it's boom, just right there, really quick. And you can go through and optimize stuff later on as you're going through. And you're like, well, as we're now going out into the wild, as we're finding things with tilt brush are maybe a little bit too unwieldy, this is a really great way of having reduction without having to go into Maya or any of the other kind of stuff. You just go to 1% and see how bad it looks. Like it's a little boxy, but like we've gone down to 300 polygons. So that's super useful, and that's just something that's kind of new-ish. And what you've done now is you have this optimized thing that you can actually then export, because you're using Unreal as just a level of detail generator, and you can export it and put it in Unity from there. So it's completely fine. So anyway, that's just like some like house cleaning that I felt was worth going over, because I feel like we're doing these long demos, and a lot of things get lost when it comes to just like mundane details, but they're worth going over. Cool?